Let's go. It's your host, Nick Perrette, and you're listening to Commercial Roofing Radio. This is the hottest radio station in the roofing world. We are your favorite place to hang out, learn, and shoot the shit. So sit back in your truck's chair, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, students, take your seats. Welcome to Business Degree for Roofing. Today we are joined by serial entrepreneur Scott Glaser. The life of a successful entrepreneur is, of course, full of risks, up and downs, and Scott has never shied away from that. At 29 years old, he actually decided to take a risk on himself and go back to business school. He studied business at the Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship and Marketing at the University of Houston, the #1 entrepreneurship program in the country for undergrad curriculum. Since then, he's been an owner of 4 different companies in his 30s. Now he's the president of TPO Pros Roofing and Restoration. From consumer products to roofing, Scott has seen it all, but he's just getting started. Scott, welcome to the podcast, my friend. What's going on?
Thanks. No, I appreciate it. And that was quite the intro, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're 29 years old, right? And you decided to go back to business school. What sparked that decision, and what were you doing before that?
Yeah, so interesting story. I'll take you a little bit back for some more context, which is why my story is just that much more interesting. But I was actually a high school dropout in 10th grade. Back then, I was skipping school, getting in trouble, and didn't really care much about the future. So I dropped out of high school, 10th grade, got my GED, and then went into sales. Spent the next decade in sales, working, just grinding. Got really good with people, and then got married to my wife, who I'm still married with. We've been married 12 years now. She moved here from Brazil. She was in the middle of business school herself when she moved here, and she left the school because she came here for years, an au pair. We got married. She never went back. I had not gone to college yet. She did not finish college. So between the two of us, right, we decided that we would go back to school to finish our degrees. I was in insurance sales at the time, so I'd been doing that for about 5 years. It was interesting. I sold cars for about 5 years before that, and then I had a guy with an insurance company tell me, when you sell cars, you have to wait 2 to 3, 4, 5 years before that customer comes back to buy another car. But in the insurance world, every 6 months, right, they renew automatically. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. Like, the customers just come back to you every 6 months? Like, let's go sell insurance. So I went to go work for somebody as this commercial and residential salesperson in insurance world. And after about 5 years, I felt like I was capped out, and there wasn't really much room for growth. And I felt trapped in that industry. So deciding to go back to school to go get the normal 9 to 5 was what I thought I wanted.
So did you have any ideas? So when you were going back to school, where you're like, all right, I'm going to get a business degree, I'm going to get a good career in it was business and marketing, I believe. So you're like, hey, or entrepreneurship and marketing, where you're like, hey, I'm just going to get a business degree, I'm going to figure out a new career path, get a job somewhere basically, and then all of a sudden you just ended up in starting your own companies?
Yeah, so having been in sales for so long, right, and I made a bunch of money in the car industry, insurance kind of showed me a little bit of stability. And then when I decided to go back to school, it started with the community college back in Northern Virginia outside of DC. I was taking 1 class per semester. A year and a half later, I had taken 3 classes. And I was like, this is going to take me, 30 years to get through college if I take a class a semester.
Yeah.
Working full time. My wife was commuting an hour each way to DC. She was trying to take ESL classes because she had to learn English. And so business was the most natural fit since I had been in sales for such a long time. So 4 or 5 years into trying to go back to college, I had to take all the prerequisites, right? silly things like math, like pre-algebra, intro to algebra. These things were like rocket science to me because I had never learned it. So it was hours with the tutor. Anyway, long story short, business made sense. So I transferred to the University of Houston from the community college. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew it was going to be business. It was going to be sales and marketing. When I found out about the entrepreneurship program at U of H, which is the #1 program in the country, they only allow 35 to 40 students annually into that program.
Wow.
So it was pretty prestigious. And as soon as you find out about that, you're like, well, that's dead set. Like, it's that or nothing, right? Like this or at all. So I applied to the program and ultimately ended up getting in, which, right, coming from a high school dropout, was a huge life milestone, kind of my first boost of like, hey, you can do sort of anything that you want. And one of the really cool things about that curriculum is it's not just the education that colleges give, right? So it's not just go study and take tests. We went to Wall Street and watched the stocks. We got to walk on the stock market. We went, they went to go hang out with Warren Buffett.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. We went to NASA. We did IP competitions. We traveled the world pitching IPs and trying to raise money. So it's really like they teach you a lean perspective on trying to run a business. They give you the tools. They let you practice, and which is great, right? I was already in my 30s, but if you're a 20-year-old coming up, like that's the most amazing experience you can get as a young person. So being able to do it older was really an interesting and unique experience.
So then how did a high school dropout go to getting into the top entrepreneurship program in the country with only 35 people getting allowed each year? Was it mindset, or what was it?
That's a great question, man. That's a great question. It was first, it was a decision that I was going to go back to school, and no, I had never known about the program until I moved to Texas. Right. So here's the other part. My wife and I sacrificed our lives, in our late 20s, early 30s. Back home, we had our own place, full-time jobs. We were newlyweds, living our life. We gave up all of that to go move in with my dad in Humble at 30. That's one of the hardest things you can ever do, is move in with your parents to go back to school full-time, right, as an adult. So we did that. We stayed with him for a year and a half before we finally moved out and got our own apartment as full-time students. And, it was a series of steps. But like I said, it's once I found out about the program, it was find out everything that you can do to give yourself the best chance, right? Why am I different than all the other students? And it was being able to kind of describe that story. It's nothing different than like in roofing sales or for a company trying to grow. It's like, what's the story that you can give? Right. And my story is like, I'm a high school dropout, but this is what I want. I have life experience. I'm in sales. I like to network. I'm all in to do whatever it takes to get into this program. And they believed in me enough to let me in.
All right. So, there's thousands and thousands, I think 100,000 roofing contractors in the country. A large percentage of those business owners of these roofing companies actually do not have any sort of college degree, business degree. I actually had Dave Sullivan on the show yesterday, right? He was in commercial for a long, long time. He actually did have his degree from Cal Berkeley, right? And so we were going back and forth. Turns out only about 9% of entrepreneurs actually do have their business degree, right? But the thing is, when you're looking at the contracting world, like you're saying, you want to, equip yourself as much information as possible, right? To have a strategic advantage over the other 109,000 roofing contractors out there. So, what did you learn in your time in that program that you could kind of share with other contractors out there who might not have that same business information and background that you're able to educate yourself with?
Honestly, so there's this whole debate about, right, like college, is it worth it, and or running your own business. And at the end of the day, ultimately, we all know that you don't need college to go out and be super successful. For me specifically, for Scott, having that degree was more of like a confidence booster, right? Because I would talk to friends that had degrees or MBAs or all this stuff, and I'm like, well, I'm not as good as them because I didn't go to college, right? Like, I'm not smart. So for me, it was specifically just confidence. Like, I can do something if I want. I'm not stupid, right? Like, even though I'm a high school dropout, I'm not dumb. what that program taught me was exposure, and it's one of the things you don't know what you don't know, and that has nothing to do with college or anything. That is all just about what you've been exposed to as a person, the people that you've been exposed to, the people that are around you. Right. So for me to go hang out with Warren Buffett or to go to Wall Street, or go to NASA behind the scenes and pitch, these are just things that I'm being exposed to, saying, oh, you can do this. Oh, this is something you could do too.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not that college makes us any smarter than anybody else, because there's a lot richer people than I am, for sure. And we're still a small growing company. But it's just exposure, man. That's what it was for me. I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing without having gone through that experience.
And, I like that, the exposure, the term exposure, right? Opportunity is not going to be knocking at your door, right? You got to go find it. And so the best way to do that is to be active. Be active, right? Doesn't matter what you're doing. Get out there, right? Exposure, people, knowledge, resources, you kind of name it, get out there and good things will happen. And another thing you mentioned, hey, you don't need a college degree necessarily, but for me, it was a confidence booster, right? So, if you're looking to take on that new risk, if you're looking to start your company, whatever it might be, and maybe you're in kind of a rough patch in your life, and who has, man? Majority of people before starting a company, they're usually in some sort of rough patch, right? So go out there, do something that's going to build your confidence and prove what you're capable of doing. And sometimes it doesn't need to be getting your college degree, right? It could be something smaller that you can slowly build off of, right? You just want to get those wins, build confidence to put yourself in position to succeed. Because if you're trying something like starting your own company, right, or whatever it might be, or a new career path, you got to believe before anybody else does.
Oh, 100%. And it could be things like going to trade shows, right? And just getting yourself exposed to new vendors or meeting other business owners. I think that's been crazy crucial for me. And then the people you meet, right? Like, I've met so many amazing people in the roofing industry that have given so much. I wouldn't even probably be in business today without the help of people that I've met from just going to networking events and trying to meet other owners.
Those two successful people usually want to help. So let's say that I'm some successful roofing contractor, right? And I meet you at a trade show, Scott, and you're just getting going, right? And you have energy, you're asking good questions, you're very engaged, everything like that. Usually successful people, they feed off of that, right? And they want to return the favor because they know that, hey, that was me, X amount of years ago. Yeah,
100%. So founder of the Wolf Center, Bill Sherrill, rest in peace, but he, one of his life rules is the secret to happiness is to give back. And it's not money. And, I can echo that. Matt Spanton, right? He helps mentor me sometimes. And he recently said he would give back and mentor to people every single day if he could. That's the real secret sauce there. So you're 100% right. Like, if anybody comes to me with questions, I always how can I help? I may not be the expert, but I'll give you what I got. I'm not afraid to.
Amen to that. So, you were an owner of multiple companies in your 30s, right? So you graduated from this entrepreneurial program, you start to get into business ownership. Tell me a little bit about that and kind of how that developed.
Yeah, so one of the most exciting businesses that I was a part of was called Mansalt. And it's a consumer product. And I didn't create it or found it, I just got brought in as a partner. But it was basically a bath salt for guys.
Okay.
And the guy who started the company, he was a military vet. He went to go work out and went to the store one day and went to go get some Epsom salt soak. And I think all that was available was like lavender salt or something like that. Yeah. And he's like, man, I don't want this stuff. So he went and created his own salt. And me being big into MMA and jiu-jitsu at the time, I took a lot of salt baths. So I was like, man, this thing is awesome. And it was really cool. And I'll tell you, like, the one thing I learned about that experience, the company's no longer around, all the partners split. But the one thing I learned about that company was it's all about branding, right? Like, as long as your product is decent, it's about what does the package look like? What's the story you're telling, right? We had this really cool black bag, little figures on them with cool, each figure had a cool story, had its own smell. And we sold a pound of salt for $10. When you could go right next door, at the next lane over and get 5 pounds for $3. but people still, and we got into hundreds of grocery stores across the country, boutiques all over the place. Chuck Liddell used it.
No kidding.
It was a really, really cool, eye-opening experience as far as like trying to build a consumer product.
What do you think is harder, like a product-based business or a service-based business then?
Ooh, that's tough. I'm learning about the service-based, right? And what I like about both of them actually is that there's typically a blueprint and there's somebody who's done it before. I'm still trying to learn how to break into the larger roofs in the commercial world, right? To some of my competitors, but as far as consumer products, it's as long as your product is good, it's just about packaging, how it looks, how you brand it, and who your target market is, right? So I don't know. I'd say they're both equally as hard. I like consumer products because I love the challenge of trying to scale it.
Mm-hmm.
But then same thing can be said about service, right? So I scaling my company. It's just always trying to figure out the challenges.
So speaking of service, do you offer service work, repair work, or anything like that for your company?
Yeah, we do repair work. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily have a whole repair division, but we do repair work. I'll tell you one of the challenges is finding qualified and keeping the guys trained to be able to go out there and do repairs correctly. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I started this company is because I saw, we get on roofs every single day, and I can't tell you how many things were done incorrectly all the time. And, I'd gotten on roofs that were 500, 600, 800 squares and that were done wrong. Yeah. And somebody was shelling out another couple $100,000 to re-roof it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, I got to put a stop. Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's put a stop to this. Let's save these people from wasting their money. So when it comes to service, I'll do it, but I'll do it if I know I can do it right.
Yeah.
And if I can't, then I'll pass it to somebody who I know can.
Well, the reason I was asking is because you mentioned with the insurance side of things, when you were in insurance, there was that recurring revenue where they kept coming back. So I was wondering if you're doing any kind of maintenance program or anything like that to try to replicate that same model on the recurring revenue side.
Yep. No, we do. We do have a maintenance program, and it's growing. It's a little newer for us, but yeah, no, we have. We have a couple condo complexes that we have on the program right now. We go out every 6 months doing photo inspections, small repairs while we're there. And it's great. I love it. We need to actually grow that more and market that more. Maintenance and maintenance is such a huge part of the business. It's kind of like the secret that's not a secret, because it is. It's that reoccurring revenue, right? Like you get that monthly check just to be there for them.
Yeah.
Right? So the more you do that, I can't tell you, like, there's a clogged drain daily, and it's just like, let's go clean the drains. Like, it's not, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But that's what we're here for, is to help you.
Absolutely.
So it's awesome.
So, all right. So, you get involved in multiple companies in your 30s, and, obviously you've had a lot of success. You're where you are today and whatnot, but, what hiccups did you kind of have as a young entrepreneur, kind of new to learning business, and kind of what did you learn from that?
Oh, Nick, I don't know if we have a long enough podcast for that.
You might have to record another episode for that one, right?
Oh, man. I'll give you two big examples. So first I'll do Mansalt. Biggest thing I learned about that was the struggle in being a minority equity holder. And then having multiple partners that aren't necessarily on the same page from the beginning. So I came in as a third partner. I was most excited about it. I was the young, fresh face, right? Like putting in all the work. I remember we were my partner at the time started another roofing company, which is actually how I got into roofing. And so his focus was not on Mansalt anymore. But I was like, look, dude, we need to add a whole portfolio of products. Like we need body wash, we need, right? Just whatever guy stuff. Let's just grow this into the next Axe or Old Spice or whatever, right? That was my vision.
Yep.
Man soap and man this and man that. And the stores loved it, right? Like you see that the grocery stores have their own sections of guys' products. So I was putting in all this work, like I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and research, formulating new products and bubble baths and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey guys, we're running out of bags, on Amazon, because we sold a bunch on Amazon. And nobody did anything. And I'm like, guys, like we gotta get this stuff going. Like, what's going on? You know, and we're starting to get bad reviews. Like one of our bag, like the salt was clumping up.
Oh no.
Because of the humidity and moisture, and it's normal, but you gotta put, you know, something in it. And they were like radio silence. So then I thought to myself, I'm like, look, I'm such a minority holder. I'm not going to do all the work for these guys.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not going to put in 50 hours a week, 100 hours a week on my off time to grow this company for them when I don't even have a majority of it, right? So I think that was the first real lesson I learned as far as like business ownership and working with partners. It's really, really, really hard to work with partners. In my experience, I've had partners a few times, and they've never ended well.
Mm-hmm. You got to find the right partner.
The expectation, right? Like I remember I read a book somewhere, I forget where it was, but you know, typically partners work out best when it's like a lifelong friend, or a family member, because those types of people know you guys. You know each other inside and out. Mm-hmm. Versus like a friend, right? You're potentially going to ruin that friendship when things start to go sideways or people start disagreeing. So that was number one. And then number two, I would say trying to learn commercial world and jumping into projects. Luckily we're still in business, but we've made so many mistakes. And in the commercial world, you know, mistakes are really, 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 really expensive.
Were you doing residential though before you got into commercial, or did you go just straight into commercial, or what did that look like?
So yeah, here's our background on how we jumped in. So I worked for another guy who was in the coatings business. Mm. He was like, look, man, coatings have these high margins. We can make all this money, blah blah blah. So he hired me, and I helped him try to grow his business. Well, we were actually literally physically doing the work, hiring like college kids and other stuff, and we didn't really know what we were doing.
Yeah.
And he did well over $1 million his first year, and but we weren't like fixing the actual problems on the roof. We were putting screws into roofs. Like, we had no idea what we were doing. It was really bad. Lawsuits started happening, insurance claims started getting filed. Like, it went sideways really fast.
Oh yeah.
And we went and hired this crew to do a TPO roof. We didn't do the work. It didn't leak afterwards, and it only took a couple days. And I was like, holy. I was like, this is amazing. Like, let's just start a company doing just that. And he was like, no, I'm already invested so much in this other stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna. So long story short, I jumped into starting this company, but not really having any sort of like background in roofing. Right. So it was a little naive. Like I had no idea what I was doing. So I tried to learn commercial roofing. Commercial roofing was really hard when you don't know what you're doing, and then you go to all the conferences, and you're like, well, residential is really easy, right? Like, let's learn this. But then, it's tough, man. It's a grind. But we did do some residential for friends. Residential is pretty easy, I think, now that I know both sides. But you can only kind of really focus on one. I've hired some coaches over the last year or two, and I was told to kind of focus on where the revenue is. And for us, that was in low slope and commercial.
How did you handle that when stuff started going sideways real quick? Because you hear those horror stories all the time on these commercial projects going sideways. So how did you handle that?
So we've been fortunate enough to stay profitable since day one, but it's being able to have that buffer in your projects and in your estimates. For me, right? And it's always you may not make any money on it, right? If you're supposed to make $20,000-$30,000 on a project and you make a screw up, well, then you don't make any money.
You're making no money.
You go from $30,000 to like a couple grand, right? So I'm still profitable, and thank God. It was an expensive lesson, right? But if I hadn't had that much money, or I'd made a mistake somewhere, but it's always that, right? It's, on flat roofs, it's disconnecting the AC lines. I've probably forgotten that 3 times and had to go out and pay an AC guy to go disconnect lines, or I've broken an AC unit that cost me $7,000 on a project. Like, it's just always something. It's tough, right? Because like they tell you don't be afraid and to just jump in and figure it out. But on the flip side, you just need to be really careful. because if you do screw something up, it could injure you.
Yeah, you gotta be prepared for that. What I mean, you came into not knowing a whole lot about the roofing and whatnot. So I mean, you mentioned estimating. I mean, I feel like estimating a commercial, and figuring out what to quote this thing out. I mean, what was your process of learning that? Because you're like, well, I got to make sure I leave some room just in case there's an error. But it's like, I don't even know how to estimate yet. So it's like, it's kind of like, I don't know what to do at all.
So at first, I relied on subs, right? And it was, it's funny because the name is TPO Pros, and I had no idea even how to install TPO. I knew nothing about TPO.
Hey, got to play the part until you get there. You know what I mean?
They say fake it till you make it, right? 3.5 years later. But yeah, so I relied on subs to do all that for me. And what I've learned is it's like not all subs are created equal. Subs will do things wrong. It's taken me years just to find the right guys. And as over the years, like I've learned more and more and more, and every day I still am on a roof where I'm not 100% sure. So one of my biggest resources has been my manufacturer rep. His name's Ian Willison, based out of Houston, Texas, with Market Makers Inc. He's a Versaco rep, and I'll tell you what. Every time I called him, he answered the phone, showed up to a job, sat down with me, explained it. Right, so that it's the mentorship and it's the guidance of others that has continued to keep me going the way I'm going.
Yeah, I think that's a big key takeaway right there, right? With relying on the resources that you have available, right? Even if you're purchasing things from them, right? That they have a lot to offer in terms of training, guidance, mentorship. They've been in this space for a while, so if you have a good rep, make sure you're leaning on them as much as possible. So, what's your strengths as a business owner? What are you good at, Scott?
I have this huge vision. I love the interaction with the customer. Some of the things that I don't necessarily like to do are the estimating, right? I don't typically tend to be a very detailed person. I tend to kind of be squirreled all over the place, bouncing around. My mind's always moving a million miles a minute. So that's always a challenge, but I'm really, really good at sales. I love to meet with the customers. I love to make those connections. One of the cool things about this is wearing all the hats is you know each part of your business intimately, right? So it's being able to take that to the customer when you're having that conversation. Hey, so you're going to need a re-roof. Oh, well, Joe says that we could just put an overlay on top of the TPO overlay. Well, did he tell you that there's 2 existing roof layers on there? No? Oh, so now we got to bring it up to code, remove both of those layers. Or are they going to pull the permit? I can't tell you how many roofing contractors don't pull permits. Probably like 1 out of 10, I feel like.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane. That's a value selling point that I have right there to my customers. Hey, we're going to pull a permit. Hey, we're going to put all the flags around the perimeter. Like, we're going to do things by the book, right? Like, no ifs, ands, or buts. And that's why we're more expensive, too. My rep, he told me there's 2 kinds of contractors. Ones that race to be the bottom, and then ones that get that what they ask for. So which contractor do you want to be?
Yep, agree with that. So what are you working on this year then? I mean, are you just trying to grow your revenue, or are you working on profit margins? Are you working on building out more of the maintenance program? Like, what's going on with TPO Roofing Pros this year?
Yeah, so, we just decided to be 100% commercial like a year and a half ago. So we had to make a huge pivot, right? For our online marketing, our SEO strategy, all of our flyers, and it's been a whirlwind. And one of the cool things about being a business owner is watching the challenges and then watching the evolutions based off of those challenges, right? So it's like, okay, a year and a half ago, we decided to be a commercial roofer. What does that look like? Well, that looks like, okay, we got to learn low slope. So how do we learn low slope? We got to go out there. All right, so what do low slope contractors that are successful, right? It's just following the blueprint.
Yeah.
Are they doing the daily reports? How does their estimates look? How quickly do they get the estimates out? Do they show options? Do they not show options? So we are constantly working on just being able to provide more value to the customer, so that we have a better closing ratio, and whatever that looks like, right? So if it's we just purchased some software called the Edge. It's $600 a month, right? It's an estimating software. It's expensive, but it makes estimating go much faster. There are less errors. Right? We've created presentations to sit down with the customer when necessarily we weren't doing that before. So it's just constantly looking at what do I need to be better at today, right? And then if I fix that, what's the new problem then what do we need to be better at? So to answer your question, we're just trying to get a little more consistent with winning more projects. Because, and here's another challenge also that I think is important to share. A lot of residential contractors want to be commercial guys, right? But I heard, there's a contractor out of Dallas. I heard him speak at an event earlier this year. He spent $1 million in 3 years trying to break into the commercial world, right? Because if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to be very expensive and you could make a lot of mistakes. And so it's really challenging and difficult, but it's taking that first step and then just being committed to seeing it through.
So you're working on more consistency in closing deals, right? So what does that plan look like? Are you focusing on more lead generation? Are you focused on your sales presentation? What aspects are you working on to try to achieve that?
All the above.
Yeah.
So, and these are all recent changes too, and I'm not shy to share these.
I like it.
So in the last 6 months, I'd never had a sales presentation. I would just send out a bid and shoot it out the email and move on to the next one, right? Because leads is not our problem. We get leads, we get calls daily. We're fortunate and blessed that the branding, right? We have a much larger online presence than what we actually are. People think that we're a multi-state company, and we're not. So that was step one. That was important to me, is the exposure, right? You have to make it look like you can at least handle these large projects. And then, so then it was the presentations, right? And it's just, that's the natural sales process that I was lacking. So it's sit down, explaining the scope of work with the customer, right? And having the conversation, like, what expectations do you have? This is what we plan on doing. Let's look over, and I always try to take a consultative approach. Let's look at the other bids and see where we're different, right? Like, let me make sure if you go with somebody else, you're not gonna waste your money. Right? Like, you're getting what you hope you're getting. So leads are fine. It's more on the sales side and just the closing ratio.
What about, one thing I'm always looking into too is CRM. Do you have a CRM that you're utilizing? Is that set up pretty well, or what would you say there? Yeah.
So little context. I spent some time with Keith Hicks from Avco last year.
Nice.
When I was really trying to dig into the insurance residential market, right? Because I didn't really know anything about it. And he showed me all his processes and kind of what that looked like. So I came back and brought it back to this company. So we do have the company CAN, we have the job numbers,
nice.
we have the daily reports, the raking reports. We do have all that, but that's more geared towards residential stuff, not necessarily in the commercial world. So that's why we brought in programs like the Edge. I'm looking at, I think Java is another one. That's some of my competitors in the area that are 100% commercial. They use Java. But there's thousands of CRMs. And we could have, that's a whole nother 15 podcast episodes
100%.
Probably talking about that.
I mean, I think, for those, I think obviously a lot of people out there are looking for more consistency in closing deals, right? I mean, you got to think as a business owner, right? You have 1 month that's really good, and then all of a sudden the next month is a slow month, right? You're like, what's going on? And, it adds stress to the company. It kind of halts some of the growth that you're trying to achieve with the company. As a business owner, for peace of mind and growth of the company, the best thing you can do is have predictable, consistent lead flow and deals getting closed, right? So I feel like, making sure you have multi-channel lead generation, so you're not depending on one source just in case one of them goes dry. Having that CRM system that is implemented to make sure that you're maximizing each lead. Sometimes it's not all about more leads, but actually maximizing those leads. And then just like Scott was saying with sales presentation and whatever you can do to improve your close rates is obviously going to have a really big impact. But those are the three, and then any numbers you can have that statistically back up what you're viewing as the health and overview of the business is the better. And hopefully you can have that reporting in your CRM system. But I mean, that's the goal for like a lot of people that everybody's working, right? Is just more consistency in closing those deals.
And on that point, and one thing I failed to bring up when I was talking about how hard it is to transition into commercial is one of the struggles that I didn't see coming being a residential versus commercial contractor is the cash flow.
Yeah.
Right. So the residential guys out there, they're out doing a roof a day, 5 roofs a day, and they're getting paid. They're taking deposits, checks are coming in, like, they're pretty lean, the sales guys, right? They don't necessarily get paid until a check comes in. In the commercial world, if you don't run lean and you're only commercial, there's no way you can exist. Like, it may take 6 months to close a deal. Yeah. It may take a year to close a deal.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's not like I can go knock 100 doors of commercial. I mean, I guess I could, but there's a lot of other stuff to do. So the cash flow cycles are very slow. And you get paid large sums, but that needs to last until your next large project. So it could be a couple months at a time. My CRM is a lot smaller than, 5 sales reps out knocking doors all day, just based on leads. You know what I mean?
And, so do you think it's one of those situations where you almost kind of have to do residential in the beginning to get that cash flow in, unless you have some kind of, savings of cash to kind of be ready for those longer sales cycles and that transition to commercial? Or
you're experienced, right? And you're going to hit the ground running because you know what you're going to do. But if you don't, it's going to be a struggle. My first roof was a garage. It was like 8 squares.
Yeah.
It was like $1,000 job. And I was excited. That was like my first sale. We did leak repairs. You take anything and everything.
Oh, absolutely. Doesn't matter what the business is. You're taking anything you can get. You're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And then that's another good thing that you mentioned, though, with the cash flow. I think, there's a lot of roofing contractors out there that don't really understand fully like the health of their business, what they're at in terms of cash flow, profitability, maybe job costing, all that kind of stuff, understanding how much they're making per job, all that kind of stuff. If you're a contractor out there that might not know that information, I mean, sitting down with an accountant, having them help you figure it out, making sure your books are cleaned up, having them review that with you once a month or once a quarter or whatever it might be, because you might be thinking one thing and you could be completely off, right? You can't really necessarily measure how you're doing as a company based off how much money you have in the bank, right? You actually got to go look at those financials, really understand, and we had, Dave Sullivan on here, like I said before, he did the same thing as you. He just got rid of his residential services, but it wasn't necessarily because he just wanted to transition to commercial. They were doing both. He looked at all the different pillars of how he has his business services built out. Turns out residential was actually losing him money. You know what I mean? And,
wow.
And he had no idea if he didn't take a deep dive, figure that out, and he could have kept moving forward. He could have been like, hey, I did X amount of jobs. This is how much money we made. Unfortunately, revenue is one thing, profitability is another, right? Yeah. So that's something to think about, I think, as you guys try to grow your business. And if you're not profitable and you're trying to scale something that's not really profitable, it can get real messy real quick.
100%. That goes back to what we were talking earlier is, how do you keep your margin where it needs to be, but still being able to explain to the customer, right? Like, why use me if I'm more expensive than the other person?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are we doing different? So that's where a lot of the sales challenge comes in, is right, being able to just explain that, because you need to have that margin. That's your overhead, like your expenses. You're going to pay yourself, or you're not going to pay yourself, or your employees. Right, in the commercial world, everybody's on salary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like I can go hire commission people to do salary work. So
I mean, what happens if you go with a chief commercial contractor, right? Maybe lack of communication, problem not solved, right? I mean, problem not solved.
I was on a 1,200 square roof that had been foam and coated, and the guy spent a couple $100,000. And I went up there and it looked like absolute disaster.
Yikes.
And it was only 2 years old. And this isn't to give foam a coat, like we're actually getting ready to do one on an oil and gas facility soon. So I'm not like anti-foam or coat, don't take it that way. But these people didn't know what they were doing, right? And this guy wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we had to go in and tear it off and put a whole new roof back in. It was another couple $100,000, right? So it's just, I'm releasing a book soon.
Sweet.
On how to partner with the right commercial roofing contractor, just to have that extra little bit of edge, right? Like it's always just, how do I be different?
It's a sales and marketing piece. You know what I mean? And it looks great. It builds you up as an expert.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's the thing is, I'm willing to pay more for expertise, right? If I know that you're going to communicate well to me, if I know you're going to fix the problem the first time, if I know you're going to be around when something else happens and I need support, right? You got to look at the same thing, right? We were talking about manufacturers, all these different resources you can use as a roofing contractor. The same thing as a business owner, right? Who are the resources that I can count on that are going to make it as easy as possible for me to make as much money as I can from this business property?
Yeah, and it's all about setting the expectation too, right? From the beginning. Like, look, this is a major construction project. Potentially things are going to go wrong, but I'm going to be here to fix it if something does go wrong. Here's an example when, right, I paid $10,000 for somebody's AC unit.
Yeah, exactly.
No questions asked because we messed up, and that's just the kind of contractor we are.
Amen to that. I love that. Well, cool, man. It's been a lot of fun. We actually got some games now to play here. We got a little bit of trivia, and then after that, we always end with enlightenment, right? So it's a quick segment. You can either share a book, a quote, a life lesson, something that you want to leave a positive impact for the listeners out there. So for the first couple, remember this is only episode 4, Scott. So you're gonna be when this blows up to be one of the greatest podcasts of all time. You're gonna be one of the OGs. But we started out as who wants to be smarter than, or who are you smarter than a roofer? We are changing the name. All right. So we're gonna do who wants to be a roofing millionaire. You're gonna get 2 lifelines. All right. So you get 2 lifelines. We got 5 questions. We got the 50-50. Right. So if you use the 50-50, we'll remove 2 of the answers, leaving you with a 50% chance of getting it right. All right. The next one is a phone a friend. So I will let you pick up your phone and call one person if you don't know the answer. And if they don't pick up, that is a use your lifeline. If they don't know, then you pick the wrong person to call. I'm sorry.
This is hilarious.
All right. So we're going to have some questions that are roofing, and we're going to have some that are more related to things about you. Okay. So,
hey Nick, just because I went to college doesn't mean I'm smart.
Hey, this is your chance to shine. This is your chance. You're a good test taker, right? Do you take all those tests?
No, I'm horrible.
Yeah, exactly. I am too. All right. So the University of Houston football team, all right, so this is where you went to school, has produced one Heisman winner, all right? Andre Ward. Yeah, well, you already knew that.
I thought that was a question.
I'm asking for the year, so too bad it wasn't the person. You would have been nailed that
year.
One. Which year did he win the Heisman? Was it A, 1987, B, 1989, C, 1992, or D, 1985?
I have no idea. I'm going to say 87.
It's close. It's B, 1989. Maybe you should use a lifeline. All right. Remember, you got 2 lifelines in the pocket. All right. They say that everything is bigger in Texas, Houston included. All right. What place does Houston, Texas come in on the list of largest cities by population? Is it A, the 8th largest, B, 5th largest, C, 4th largest, or D, 3rd largest?
It's either 3 or 4.
What do you think?
I'm going with my gut. 4.
He's going with 4, and he got it right. C, that is the correct answer. And now we're off and running. I love it. All right.
This is college. You just guessed.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it worked. That's how you got by, right? All right. So starting a business is anything but easy. All right. So what percent of businesses fail within the first year of their conception? We got A, 20%, B, 3%, C, 10%, or D, 50%.
I'm using a lifeline. Wait, how does this work?
So you got 2 lifelines, all right? So you got 50-50 where I'll eliminate 2 of the wrong answers. Or you can phone a friend, and you can call somebody. They can look it up online for all I care, whatever it might be, but you got to call the right person.
Let's do the 50-50.
All right, we're going to do the 50-50. All right, so we have 50% and 3% have been eliminated, leaving you with A, 20%, or C, 10%.
And this is how many businesses fail in the first year?
First year.
God, I thought it was way more than that.
Oh, it goes up. Trust me. That first 5 years is very, very
Must
high.
Have been the 5 years.
Yeah, the first 5 years is real
maybe.
quick. Yeah, maybe 3 years.
Let's say 20.
Boom. He's off and running again. That's 2 in a row. I like it. All right, so you're the TPO Pro, right? That's what they say. He is the TPO Pros Roofing and Restoration. So you know that the TPO is put on countless roofs these days, but that wasn't always the case. When was the first TPO roof installed in the U.S.? Was it A, 1975, B, 1990, was it C, 1982, or D, 1986?
Oh, it's either 82 or 86, I bet. Let's phone a friend.
Well, let's go. Who we calling? This is the first phone the friend on Roofing Millionaire, so this is an exciting moment. Who's the first call?
Let's call. Who the heck is gonna know this?
And you gotta put it on speaker for me too.
I'm gonna call my rep.
Hopefully your rep doesn't miss the call. We'll see here. You gotta tell me you're on Roofing Millionaire.
He never answers the phone. He's always busy. Oh, you know what? No, let's call.
Oh, he's calling somebody else. He's switching. He's not switching his rep. You said always call the rep, except now.
Except for he said he might have answered. You know, they never. Yeah. All right, let's do this. I'm calling Paul Reed.
Paul Reed, put him on speaker. Let's see what we got.
He won't be able to hear us, but we'll be able to hear him.
Hey Scott, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, Paul? How are you?
Doing well.
Hey, I'm actually in the middle of a podcast right now, and I'm phoning a friend for an answer.
Got it.
Do you know the answer to when the first TPO roof was installed? Was it 1975, 1990, 82, or 86?
I did not know that.
I'm guessing 82 or 86.
I would be in the 80s if I were to guess.
Early or mid? No pressure.
Early.
All right, we're going 82.
We're going 82, and the answer.
All right, thanks, Paul.
We had Paul Reed on the phone there. So originally he was going to call the manufacturer, and then he gave Paul Reed a phone call. If you guys don't know Paul, he's with Northwest Roofing, and he also is the founder of the Commercial Roofing Academy. So he knows a thing or two about growing a commercial business. But unfortunately, your phone, the friend, left you hanging. He was right. It was in the 80s, but unfortunately, it was 86. The first known TPO membrane used as roof material was installed in 1986 in Michigan. All right. So now we got probably the toughest question yet. All right. So obviously, we do our research beforehand, try to get an understanding of, who you are, what you like, all that kind of stuff. And it sounds like you're a big fan of torchy tacos. All right.
Oh, what? Love torches.
Oh, yeah. We are too. One of our last office was actually pretty close to one. So their menu is awesome, but how well do you know it? All right. So which of these tacos is not a classic taco item on their menu? All right. So we have A, Trailer Park, B, Lucky Duck, C, Crossroads, or D, Tipsy Chick.
Phoning a friend.
You can't phone a friend. It's gone.
I thought I got two of them. Okay.
You can't use a lifeline for all these, man. Call a reader. He screwed you.
Look, I do chicken tacos. You know those people that get the same thing every single time?
You do? Oh, yeah.
That's this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's good, right? All right, shoot. My wife always gets these.
Trailer Park, Lucky Duck, Crossroads, or Tipsy Chick?
Tipsy Chick.
That's what I was actually into, too, but the answer is B, actually, Lucky Duck.
Wow, yeah. I did not do
good. You did a great job. My team promised me that all the guests would be getting some kind of gift. So I'm sure they'll be in touch with you. If they don't, let me know, and I'll make sure that we get it over to you. But now we have the end with enlightenment, right? So the last thing here can be a book, a quote, whatever it might be, something about positive impact. Let's end with some enlightenment, Scott. What you got?
This is gonna be from some recent conversations with my guy Matt Spanton, and I've recently dealt with this a little bit. So they say that business is essentially a measurement of your personal life, right? and I've heard other speakers say the same thing, that there's no such thing as business problems, only personal problems that enter into the business. I think that was Kurt with linear roofing.
I like that.
So if your business isn't doing as well as you think it is, right? And I'm super guilty of this. We go to all the conferences, we go find all these outlets to try to learn and fix it. But a lot of times we need to look within. And that's really the hard work, right? Like sometimes we can work all day, but being able to work on yourself, I think is a challenge for a lot of people. Being able to admit and actually realize that I have some work to do to make my life better, to what brings me happiness, right? What brings me joy. I hope it's not chasing money, because that's a never ending cycle, and you'll never be happy. So the wisdom, and I'm definitely not an expert, and I'm just going down this journey myself of trying to find my inner peace and happiness, right? So that way because my business will do better because of it. So I'll leave you all with that. Just, be willing to not just look at the business, but be able to look inside at yourself, with whatever personal struggles or childhood things that you got going on. Be willing to work on that.
I completely agree with that. That's a great tip right there, right? So if you have any kind of baggage, whether, something at home that's bothering you, or maybe you're lacking sleep, exercise, not treating yourself well, maybe you're burnt out, whatever it might be, right? You're going to be bringing that into the environment. So making sure you're taking yourself first, because that's what you're going to be bringing into the company, and especially as a leader, right, of the company. People are looking at you to kind of set that tone. So if you're not coming prepared, if you're not feeling fresh, if you're not feeling good, if you're not happy, chances are it's going to be seeping into your culture. So great advice. Scott, it's been a pleasure to have you. I wish you would have done better on who, and won some money and Roofing Millionaire, but other than that, it's been great. So
hey, we set the bar, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be easier for the next guest. So Scott, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you too. It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much.